I think a good entrepreneur has two versions of themselves. There's the dreamer with wild aspirations, and there's the version of themselves stuck in reality. And it's their job to find the middle ground between the two to turn their dreams into reality. And so the best way to do that is to actually just get started.
Welcome to A Founder's Life. I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thankz, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thankz.com, that's THANKZ.com, with a subject line of Founder's Life, and you'll receive $1,000 off your first month. Now, I'm excited today to be joined by Zachary Collins. Zachary, thank you for joining us. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. So my name is Zachary Collins. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Ludus, and we create software for the performing arts. So we do online ticketing, marketing, fundraising, basically building box office software, box office operating systems.
Excellent. Do you want to talk a little bit about the journey that brought you to where you are and sort of what a typical client looks like, what you're doing differently for those clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Ludus started, it was my freshman year of college. My former high school theater director, my co-founder, Kevin Schneider, came to me wanting an easier way to sell tickets online. And he knew that I was capable of building web applications, websites. And I was like, sure. So I built just a basic grid of checkboxes to symbolize their seating chart and a PayPal integration. And he ended up selling $40,000 worth of tickets to Phantom of the Opera high school production. And I was like, maybe there's a business opportunity here. And so we started working with other local high schools and organizations and just learning what were their needs, right, when it came to online ticketing. And at the time, we were focused on online ticketing and K-12. At one point, we said, we want to become synonymous with high school ticketing. And so we started just building it. It was a side project for a few years while I was in college. And we officially became a company, hired our first employee in 2019. Then the pandemic hit, and it was back down to the two of us. Right at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, we saw this inflection point because we had been building this really great product, really listening to customers. And what happened during that time is a lot of the customers in this market were pushed back into the market because, some of our competitors went out of business or they lost the trust of their customers or they got acquired by PE and changed their pricing models. And so all of a sudden we started seeing all these new people start using Ludus. And what also happened is a lot of these high school directors that we were working with, they also like moonlight as, directors, and they're on the boards at their local community theaters and performing arts centers. And so those customers started coming to us and we started finding another part of the market that we fit really well in. And now we work with over 4,500 performing arts organizations in the United States, from K-12, colleges and universities, community theaters, and performing arts centers. And so that's really our target market. And the size of customers, we're really looking at like the small to medium sized organizations, or, you think of it like SMBs, but within the performing arts. So we're not trying to get the giant football stadium, but there's a whole pocket. There's a $6 billion plus industry here in the United States of just these SMBs within the performing arts.
I always love the scale of America. So, it's a $6 billion market because it's just a big market and all speaking one language, give or take.
Yeah. For the most part, give or take. We have had some needs for like Spanish translation, but especially for the ones closer to the borders. But, overall, it's I always say it's a market that people don't realize is there until I start talking about it. And they're like, whoa, like I had no idea community theater and like high school sold so many tickets.
I love that. I think it's great to come up with something that is tapping into a relatively unique market. Not a lot of other people really doing it, and certainly on scale like you are. That's fantastic. And talk to us a little bit about what family means to you.
I think family is so important, and we all come from different backgrounds, different families. We have different family dynamics. Some of us grew up with, both parents married. Some of us, like myself, grew up with divorced parents. And so everybody kind of learns and goes through life with these, different backgrounds. But it really is like that rock. It's like that, it's the relationships that exist there, that, you can like kind of fall back on as long as you have that healthy relationship there. So I've always thought that like family there is like what kind of drives me forward. That I always think in my head, like, man, I can't wait for Ludus to reach this milestone so I can tell my parents about it, so I can tell my grandparents about it. Like I'm always excited to share those milestones. And so it continues to drive me forward. But also like in relation to business, I, learned early on that it was important to set like expectations with family when it comes to building a business and building a company. Because early on, like you're very, very focused on your company. And sometimes it feels like you're kind of pushing your family to the side. And really in reality, you're not trying to do so. You just have to set those expectations with the people in your lives, with the relationships and the families that you have. And that's always like been a big part of it. So like realizing like family's always there, but it's also important that you have to continue moving forward in life as yourself. And if you're building a business, you have to focus on your business and set those expectations with your family.
So true. And I think family can look many different ways for different people.
Mhm.
And what do you like to do for health? How does health look for you? And I, for that, I'm talking about it can be mental health, physical health, nutrition.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a balance of, all that. I believe that health is important, but it's practical, at least for me. For me, it's a way to stay sharp for working in life. And what I find really important when it comes to health is having consistency, building those habits. Like personally, what I do is every other day I go to the gym and I have a personal trainer that I work with. And it's really important that I stick to that schedule because it allows me to just like, no, this is what I'm doing this week. This is what my schedule looks like. This is where I can put my mental capacity into this workout. And I really, really find it's best when I focus on the exercising and the things that really just energize myself. And because I really am looking to set myself up for success for the last 50% of my life, right? So if you start young and you stay healthy at a young age, you're setting yourself up for success later in life. And that's physical health, but it's also mental health. Like mental health, we don't talk a lot about, you always see like the Instagram posts of the people that, are fit or they lost a bunch of weight and they're working out. But there's also that mental aspect of it. And I'm guilty of this, but like waking up and the first thing you do is check your phone and you start scrolling your phone. It's not good for your mental health. So I've started like deleting apps off my phone, deleting Instagram, Facebook. I'm trying to be more present. I find that has helped my mental health tremendously. And so again, it's a balance, exercise, mental health, nutritional eating, and all that. So it's a balance, but it's also hard because you get stressed sometimes as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, nothing's perfect. I think it's about healthy habits, and nothing can or should be 100%. That to me is the fundamental issue with a lot of diets. I mean, I've lost 95 pounds from where I was. I'm by far the fittest I've been in my life. And people say, "Oh, how did you do that?" And I'm like, it's the small changes. It's building healthy habits.
Yep,
I don't believe in
exactly.
diets because the problem with the diet is it ends, or you cheat one day and you're like, the
Yes.
whole
And then
thing's
you feel
pointless.
guilty.
No,
Yeah.
just eat
Yeah.
healthily
Yeah.
80+% of the time. And yeah, sometimes you eat some stuff that you probably shouldn't, and it doesn't really matter.
I was just having this conversation too. It's like, yes, sometimes I do want a Coca-Cola. Sometimes I do want a Big Mac. And you know what? The reason I do that is because I enjoy it. It makes me happy. And I'm not doing that every single day of my life, but it's okay to have those days where you're like, yeah, I really need a cheeseburger.
Very true. Or a nice bit of ice cream.
Or that too. Yeah.
And what do you like to do for fun? What is fun? What do you do?
Yeah, great question. So really enjoy seeing new areas and travel. So, whether that's in other countries or even just here in the United States, we have a lot of great things to see here in the States. Like recently, my wife and I, we went to Iceland and we did the entire loop around Iceland. And that was just an absolute blast. Just seeing all the different landscapes. And, one moment you're in the snowy mountains and the next moment it looks like you're walking Mars and then you're going to a spa, and so it was a really great time. And I think what's fun about that is you're just experiencing new things, experiencing new cultures, new ways of thinking. And the other key component of this, and I was just reading about this, is people always talk about how life goes very, very fast. Especially as you get older, it seems like life speeds up. You remember when you're young and time kind of goes on and you're really taking everything in. And you get older, it just feels like week after week, it's just flying by. And the reason being is when you're young, you're experiencing all these new things that you've never experienced before. And as we get older, we stop experiencing all those new things. And so life starts to speed up. So the fun aspect of it is when you're experiencing these new things and traveling and seeing the world, it slows time down a little bit. And I just find that really enjoyable. So travel is fun. And then also just reading, I like to get inspired by others' stories. So like, here on this podcast, Founders Life, hearing other stories. I like to read biographies and autobiographies, and just learn about other people and how they've gone about life.
Excellent. And are you reading physical books, ebooks, listening, audiobooks? What do you
I
like?
am a physical book guy. So my wife always makes fun of me because it's like we are running out of room on our bookshelf in our house. And it's just I've tried uh the Kindle, and I've read some things on the Kindle, but and it's great when you're in a pool or at the lake. But I like the physical flipping of the pages. It makes it feel more real. And I like to just look at the books in my bookshelf and say, hey, those are, that's a book that I read, and I really think to the future, like, okay, someday I have kids and someday I have grandchildren. They're gonna find my library and they're gonna be like, oh, what's this book? And then I can tell them about that book. So that's kind of why I like the physical books.
Well, if this library is going to be growing until you have grandkids, you're going to be getting a bigger and bigger house just for the library.
Exactly, exactly.
How does a balanced life look for you?
Balanced life. Well, it's tricky. It's hard. I would say like I've learned more balance recently than I early on, and or I'm 30 now. But throughout my 20s, especially when you're building a business and you have like this dream, and you're ambitious and still ambitious, but it's really finding I think again it's just about setting expectations for the people in your life, but also for yourself. Just saying, okay, this is what I want my life to look like. It's okay to slow down for a second to go for a walk and get a cup of coffee. It's okay to go to the beach one day instead of sitting in the office. Like it's okay to take those mental breaks. But ultimately, 90% of my time, 80 to 90% of my time, it's thinking about the business and the future, what the future looks like, and my dreams and aspirations. That's what continues to drive me forward. And that 20% of the time is for myself, for my family, spending time with my wife and my friends. And it's really just saying, this is what I'm doing in the moment and setting an expectation. Really like blocking that time off for those specific things. And the way that I do that and what I'm learning, still trying to get good at this, is just really just blocking off like those specific times on my calendar. So 3 o'clock today, I know I'm going to go walk and grab a cup of coffee. I'm going to need a break at 3 o'clock. And it's literally 5 minutes down the block here. Or things like, okay, I know I have to go to the grocery store tonight and get some groceries. Or I know I have to mow the lawn tonight. And I'm going to actually put that on my calendar, which sounds weird, but as a to do, but it frees up that mental capacity to know, okay, it's not in the back of my mind anymore. I actually know that I have to do that. And that allows me to keep my balance. So I know, like, what am I focusing on in business and what am I focusing on in life?
Makes complete sense. I think what gets scheduled get done. And people
Exactly.
talk about, oh, I don't have
Yep.
time to,
Yep.
whatever it is, meditate, to work out, whatever these things are you
You,
want
ha-
to do.
y-
You have time to do whatever you want,
yes.
because as an
Yes.
entrepreneur, your to-do list is never going to get finished anyway.
No, it's never finished. There's always something to do. So you have to be intentional with your time.
What has been a pivotal moment for you?
I think, the most pivotal moment really is when I was younger. So growing up, I loved entrepreneurship. I loved creating things, selling things, making money. I mean, that's really what it came down to, the true fashion of entrepreneurship. And so, at one point I was creating comic books. I wanted to be the next Stan Lee of Marvel. I mean, I would sell my comic books to people. And then, the next, year I wanted to be the next Willy Wonka. And I created a candy bar called the Wacky Zacky and sold it to people. And so I was always creating things and inventing these things. And I knew I wanted to build something and give it to the world, in the mind of an entrepreneur. And then about when I was 12 years old, I was introduced to something called GeoCities, which was a way to create websites. So it was owned by Yahoo, and it was really kind of like drag and drop websites, but it was like the old school websites, the early 2000s, 90s looking websites. And so I started, playing around with it. And one day I discovered AdSense or AdWords. You put the ads on your website, and I clicked one of the ads and I earned like a penny. And I was like, whoa, you can make money from the internet. And so I started teaching myself web languages, just books at the library, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And then I, saved up Christmas money and bought my first computer off of overstock.com. And it was like this thick thing. And just started learning computer programming and web programming, and built some websites, sold them, throughout high school. But that moment where I realized, like, okay, here's technology, something that I grasped very, very quickly, and mixing it with entrepreneurship. That was like that most pivotal moment in my life where I was like, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Sounds like a powerful moment. And What about a piece of advice you could give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
I think a good entrepreneur has two versions of themselves. There's the dreamer with wild aspirations, and there's the version of themselves stuck in reality. And it's their job to find the middle ground between the two to turn their dreams into reality. And so the best way to do that is to actually just get started. I found that I've done certain things in the past where like, ask, 100 people about this idea and like what they would want to see in it. And by the end, you get to the point where it's like, I don't know if this idea is going to work anymore. And the reality is that you're the dreamer. You're the one that sees the future, and you need to focus on your dreams and figure out how to turn those into reality. Because if you ask 100 people, more than likely, they're going to kill your idea because they don't know what they want. They're more than likely stuck in reality. They're day to day, and you're the one that sees the future. So, focus on that. Focus on what you want to bring into the world and make it happen.
Great advice. I think Steve Jobs, focus groups are great. There's lots of uses for focus groups. But Steve Jobs was like, it doesn't work. Like if you had a focus group for do you want to hold the web in your hand, everyone would have said, no, not really.
No, why would I want to see that? I can't see the whole website on my phone. That's what people would say. Like I'd have to zoom in. Whereas really what happened is we created websites that were optimized for mobile, but it was really, really hard for people to envision that at the time. And so really what it comes down to is people don't always know what they want until you show it to them.
That's very true. And a phone without a keyboard. Again,
yes, exactly. Oh, yeah.
Before the iPhone, you would have had a keyboard. So, well, thank you. I appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
And how can people find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter, X now, /Zachary Collins, or you can add me on LinkedIn, Zachary Collins there. I'm always happy to connect.
Right. Well, thank you. And thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and leave a review.